To another tragedy now, this time in the Gaza Strip, but involving health workers. 7 of them were killed when Israeli armed forces unintentionally struck a convoy from the humanitarian group World Kitchen in Gaza late on Monday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the issue earlier today, telling reporters outside hospital, unfortunately, in the last day, there was a tragic case of our forces unintentionally hitting innocent people in the Gaza Strip. It happens in war. We will investigate it right to the end. We're in contact with the governments and we will do everything so that this does not happen again. Israeli Defense Forces had earlier expressed sincere sorrow over the deaths, while stopping short of accepting responsibility. In response to the killings, World Central Kitchen has suspended its operations, delivering vital food aid in Gaza, where Israel's offensive has pushed hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to the brink of starvation. The tragedy has not been lost on the international community. World leaders have been condemning the Israeli airstrike, while learning the 3 British nationals were among those killed, along with Australian, Polish, Palestinian workers and a dual US-Canadian citizen. The Australian Prime Minister says he expects full accountability after Lalzami Francom was listed among the dead. The CEO of World Kitchen, Central Kitchen that is, says this is an unforgivable attack and the organisation is pausing its operations. Meanwhile, the UK's Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, has called on Israel to provide a transparent explanation into the attack, saying it is deeply distressing. For Cyprus's president, hears of the stance that global leaders must double down on efforts to get aid into Gaza following the death of these 7 food aid workers. China, on the other hand, says it's shocked, opposing all acts that harm civilians, damage civilian facilities, and violate international law. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief, Josep Borrell, calls for an investigation into the attack, adding the incident shows the United Nations Security Council resolution must immediately be implemented. However, Israel's military spokesperson, Admiral Daniel Hagari, says it is conducting a thorough review into the tragic incident. In another development, Iran has vowed to respond to another Israeli strike on Monday that destroyed an Iranian consulate building in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Israel would regret this crime, while President Ibrahim Raisi insists that it would not go unanswered. Iranian state TV reported that 7 Revolutionary Guards, including 2 generals and 6 Syrians, were killed. The Israeli military said it did not comment on foreign media reports, but an unnamed senior Israeli government official says those killed had been behind many attacks on Israeli and American assets and had plans for additional attacks. It also insisted the embassy was not a target. The New York Times cited 4 Israeli officials confirming Israel had carried out the attack, but denied the building had diplomatic status. Israel has acknowledged carrying out hundreds of strikes in recent years on targets in Syria, it says, are linked to Iran and allied armed groups which are armed, funded and trained by the Revolutionary Guards. Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is out of hospital. He has been discharged from the hospital in Jerusalem, where he had undergone a hernia surgery on Sunday. He made a post on the X platform. The 74-year-old leader thanked his doctors for their care. Leader of the Prime Minister's surgery team, Alon Pikaski, said his condition is excellent and he is fully capable of continuing with his work. Joining me now is political and international relations expert, Professor Femi Otubanjo, who joins me from here in Lagos. Professor, thank you for making time to join us on this very important discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not often, that Israel has admitted it made a mistake with its attacks, on targets. Usually it insists that it's precise. And then here you have the government saying that, those aid workers were not the target. And then also saying about the Iranian embassy in Syria, that was not the target. What do you make of these attacks? Professor Tubanjo, I'm hoping that you can hear me. I was asking your thoughts on the attacks on Kuwait.
Yes, well, I think I always remember a Yoruba proverb that talks about they say an alpha God burnt and you're asking for the beard. That in the old, it tells you the essence that once you have a holistic problem, picking on little aspects of it may not be rewarding. What happened, did say sometime on a similar program like this on channels, that go into Gaza, the ground operations in Gaza was going to get Israel into a quagmire. And that's where Israel is today. It's stuck there. It has lost international opinion. The last Security Council resolution, the United States did not support. It abstained, which essentially means that it could have used this power of veto, but it did not use it. The United States did not use it. And Biden has been putting pressure on Netanyahu to think of softer options, ceasefire, so that you can release the hostages, allow food to go in, and so on. And you have this right-wing stranglehold in Israel that is not listening to voice of reason. You know, at the beginning, we knew this was going to happen because the moment you start bombing indiscriminately, disproportionately, you are going to lose the sympathy of people, no matter the initial cause of the problem. We know that you are defending your own interests and sovereignty, but at what level, in what proportion? Israel has set for itself a target which would lead to its being ostracized from the world. You want to destroy Hamas. That means you have to bomb everywhere. Now they have gone to the very hideous extent of killing aid workers. And they have killed many of them. They have killed journalists. They have killed everybody that could be killed. A recent UN Special Rapporteur report says that Israel has reached three levels of genocide out of 5 prescribed by international humanitarian law. And unfortunately, whatever the justification for his action, whatever the reason for his action, what it is doing cannot justify it. It is gone beyond. People are starving. Thousands have died, including children. Even in hospitals, people have been killed who are receiving treatment. How can you justify that? That is barbarism at its worst. And I don't think that Israel should return to some level of common sense. You want to destroy Hamas? It's not possible. You're not going to destroy Hamas. You have to destroy Hamas means that you have to level the whole of Gaza. And that is an obscene objective, if you may ask me.
I quite understand what you're saying, Professor, because the Israeli Defense Forces have carried this offensive even to Lebanon. They've gone as far as there to kill a Hezbollah militant. And now, you know, this attack on the Iranian embassy, the Israeli government is saying that was not the target of the attack. But then again, it did not even acknowledge that that was a diplomatic building. I mean, and then, you know, these attacks on the health workers, these are allies, people who have nationalities with allies of Israel, Australia, US, Canada, even Britain. I'm just wondering, you know, how they are responding to this, although the only response we have so far is of the Australian Prime Minister, who says they have to get to the bottom of this. But how do you predict relations going on between, you know, Israel and these other should we still call them allies at this point?
One thing you can be sure is that the allies will not abandon Israel. Because what they are doing is to try to put pressure on Israel to surrender, to rethink its strategy, to rethink its strategic objective. You know, it cannot be achieved by destroying the whole of the Gaza Strip. Unless Israel is planning to occupy Gaza, the way it has occupied the other Arab lands, then of course that's a different ball game, a different battle war that it has to fight. Unfortunately, you do have collateral damage when you have wars. You even kill sometimes Israel, although they have not been announcing Israeli airstrikes, must have killed a number of Israeli soldiers. You do have that. So if you have a situation in which some persons who belong to countries that are sympathetic to you are killed, that is part of the vagaries of war, that you have this unfortunate collateral damage. But really, Israel needs to sit back now and rethink. Netanyahu was talking about victory in a few weeks. Victory, what kind of victory? At what cost? At what level of destruction? How we are going to achieve it? We are going to kill every Hamas militant? Have you succeeded in 6 months? No. You are not going to succeed because the people have the way of metamorphosing, of mixing up with people, of using civilians to cover themselves. They've developed strategies for survival. And,
yeah, but how should the international community respond to this? The UN Security Council did agree a resolution last week, which of course has not been implemented. Israel has, rejected, that resolution. They can't put boots on the ground in Israel to stop the IDF. What else can they do to stop, Israel continuing with these attacks in Gaza, even though, these are targeted at Hamas, and everyone seems to have felt the impact of Hamas and militant groups. How do they go ahead to impose on the Israeli government to backpedal, on some of these attacks in Gaza?
Yeah, you are asking the most difficult questions in international relations. How do you deal with big powers? How do you get big powers to do the will of the international system? Israel is a very powerful country in that region, for example, and it can do whatever it wants to do, unless, of course, the international system is going to raise its own army to go and stop it from doing what it. So there's really nothing anybody can do. That's the reality. The United States, of course, has a great deal of leverage on Israel. But don't forget, this is an election year in the US. So there's a limit to which Biden can put pressure on Israel and not lose the Israeli lobby. And of course, Trump will play up on that. And so it's a very difficult situation for the world. The rest of the world can do nothing. The United States can do very little. So we just have to hope that reason will prevail in Israel. They will recognize that they have lost the world. They have lost international public opinion. There's nobody on their side. And when they start losing their friends, that will be unfortunate for them. But the real reality is that in order to achieve their purpose of destroying Israel, they will lose all the sympathies they have from the rest of the world.
I know that there will be more reactions to this. I mean, the number of global leaders who have already reacted, their reactions are noted, but I know that there will have to be more actions to counter what Israel has done. Prime Minister Netanyahu seemed remorseful enough, but that isn't enough considering, the gravity of what has really happened, and that is the attack on aid workers considered, innocent people in this instance. And then the whole world itself has been calling for Israel to stop its attacks on innocent Palestinians, those who have had to pay the ultimate price for this war. Thank you so much, Professor Femi Otobanjo, for joining us on the program. We'll have more discussions about this later in the week.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good evening.